Hi, everyone. We're walking through the latest design of feature flags, which is super exciting. And I'm here with Orit. Quick recap. Here is the feature flag list view. We did some polishing from where we were last time, so it matches the MR view, which is a little bit nicer. We've gotten these tabs, so we have active feature flags, which means at least one of the strategies is turned on, and the issue is not closed. We have an inactive strategy, which means the issue is open and no strategies are enabled. And then we have this third, which is closed, which means that it has active strategies, but the issue has been closed. Actually, it should mean the issue is closed regardless, now that I'm thinking it through. But the idea is basically to follow that MR approach where we have open MRs, you have a merged MR, which means it succeeded, and you have a closed MR, which means nothing was merged, but the MR is closed. So I'm hoping that will resonate with our users. I did move the view user list out of the tabs. So now when you click on this, it'll have its own UI. That UI should be a really small amount of work because it should just mirror what it is right now on its own page. And then later on, we can have our own issue and epic and discussion around if we want to do anything with user lists to make them better. So I'm not proposing that work, just kind of moving how to get there. And then we have our classic new feature flag and configure, which are the most important. Does this make sense so far?
Yeah, if we can, you can just walk through the list itself. So you have the feature flag name, the ID, the strategy, the environment that it's active or inactive for. On the right-hand side, we kind of talked about this asynchronously. You have the person that's assigned, which may be more than one, right? And then we have the strategies. And now that I'm looking at it, the icon for strategies is a little bit confusing for me. And maybe we should rethink it because it looks to me like a toggle. So I would expect like this is on for like 3 environments out of 7. Like, I don't know, it's a little bit confusing for me in terms of the icon selected, but it's not like the end of the world.
For sure. Assuming we're all good moving at the end of this design phase, my plan is to open up a unique issue with the foundations team to create an icon for strategies. This is actually a progress bar because I was thinking of rolling out and it looks like a toggle. You're totally right. So this isn't the right icon. I'll open up that issue. For the testing, I will probably set up the prototype. So if you were to hover, you'll get a tooltip that says what it is. So it'll say 7 strategies or 7 active strategies, depending on how that works out. So we'll give a queue to the user, and then the icon is just a separate issue we need to work through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you said the number of environments and the number of discussions we have. So that looks really nice. I like the fact that we have the date that the last time it was changed, very similar to issues.
One change I did make is our previous design, we had the toggle first. Here I put it last because GitLab pattern is we have actions on the right. And from a UX standpoint, users read from left to right most of the time. So they're going to understand what it is they're interacting with and then be able to interact with it. That's kind of the flow. So that's the only reason we moved it over here. It's still nice and bold and large, so it should be easy to tell active and inactive, especially when you start to see that an inactive will have all of the environments also gray. So there's a couple cues along the way.
Okay.
Speaking of these cool pills, what I was thinking, we removed the strategy details. And so if I click on one, we'll get a nice little modal, which I will polish up a little bit, which basically contains all of the strategies for the feature flag related to that environment. So for production, for the feature flag named feature flag name, there are 2 strategies. There's an active user list, and you can see the details here. What other environments this strategy is impacting. So that's one strategy. And then there's also one that's turned off that is just a % rollout based on the user ID. And then again, we'll have other environments. I'll make sure these are consistent. I just kind of put this together. If I hit view details, it'll go to the strategies tab of the issue. And if I hit close, it'll just go back to the list view. Does that make sense?
It does.
Awesome. So that's the list view. Kind of clean it up, polish it. You can see this closed status is kind of cool now. Over here, we're looking at the detail view, which my screen isn't big enough. And so most of this stayed the same. I was working with the team on Create as well as Amelia, who was working on incidents. we use the same hotbar that incidence uses for our metadata instead of having it underneath here. That was an alignment change that we made. It's the same information. Using the hotbar though gave us a little bit more freedom. So we can actually say strategies 10 total, 8 active to kind of give more of those cues to users. And then the number of environments, we show the number and then show the related environments, which is the detail we see from the list view. So that adds some continuity for users as well.
Do we have a limit on how many environments we can display?
So my theory, sorry, not my theory. My current plan is to basically fill out this space. And then the last one, if it will break, just says view more. And if you click on it, more pills will show up and that hotbar will expand.
Okay.
We could definitely look into it, but that was my first plan. The environments tend to be much smaller. And this was also assuming the grouping like production here, or if we had review apps all in a group as well. That's all carrying that conversation.
And if you, sorry that I'm jumping ahead, but if you click on the strategies tab, that's where I would see expanding like the strategy and the environments and being able to add it like today, right? Okay.
Yep. And in the notes of the breakdown I have a little bit later in our meeting, I was talking about this. This design for strategies can be put into its own sub-epic. I'm using the design that Dimitri, the previous designer, had put together. And it's just there as a stepping stone for us to be able to polish the strategies from where they are now. That's not necessarily a required part of the work. Okay. So we can move that as a sub-epic and then move it out if we want or keep it in. We can definitely play around with that. So yeah, there's a strategy tab, the code reference tab, that also, nothing changed there. I think we've looked at it before, where it just shows, here's the number of times it shows up in your code, which is awesome, I think. The only thing I really wanted to review in terms of flow was talking through this closed feature flag. So because this is an issue and can exist in a backlog, it has to be able to be open or closed. And that is different than enabled or disabled. Active or inactive, probably the better term. Right. Where the issue can be open and have no active strategies. The issue can be open and have active strategies. The issue can be closed with active strategies. The issue can be open, or sorry, it can be closed with inactive strategies. Do we think that that's going to get confusing for users? One thing I did just to kind of guide the conversation is when you close a feature flag, I did design a modal that will pop up and say, this feature flag currently has 2 active strategies. Are you sure you want to close this feature flag issue with active strategies? Does this make sense? What are your thoughts on that kind of interaction between the issue being open and closed and the strategies being on or off?
So this is a little bit complicated. So on the one hand, I like the fact that you're closing this, close everything that's associated to it kind of approach. On the other hand, there are different types of feature flags and different things that I'm interested in. So when we think about feature flags, a lot of people are thinking about experimentation and like trying out a new feature and then saying, okay, this looks good. Now I'm going to remove all the conditions and leave this on for everyone. But in fact, there are different kinds of feature flags too that come in mind that are not necessarily going to be removed. So one of them is a configuration flag. And the other one is like, imagine that you want to use feature flags by just for segmenting users. So you decide that there's a feature that you're going to enable to premium users and only them. Or you're going to segment your users by first-time users, by anyone that has been in my system for under 3 months. And so you have all this guidance that you're helping them out. And then you get rid of it because people get used to it and then it's annoying. Right. So there's like these permanent features that stay in the system. You create them once. So if I were to create them in the code, I would create it in the code, have the associated MR, whatever. And then when I close the feature that needed to be, created in order to this feature flag, I finished it, but the flag is still going to be active forever. So it's kind of, I don't know, like it depends on what the use case is. we do have in the backlog this notion of define the feature flag type. And then, this guidance would probably make more sense. So I think like to say if we could probably show this modal of a warning for every flag and just let people say, yeah, close everything or no, like leave it up to them.
What we could do as like a middle ground, as we start to establish the idea that feature flags can be of multiple types, we can add a little checkbox here that just says, don't remind me again.
Yeah.
So if they are users who regularly create feature flags, roll it out, like it, and then leave it active as per their configuration, but close the issue because it's done, there's nothing else to do with this feature flag. If that's their normal flow, we can give them the option to not get this annoying pop-up every time they want to do that, while still making sure that if users think that closing the issue will turn off the strategies, we give them that notice that's not how the two will interact.
Okay.
Does that?
It does. It makes sense to me. And I do want to just repeat one thing about the feature flag behavior is at the moment, feature flags are project level. We're probably going to bring them to the group level at some point. But having said that, if you're doing this dismissive message, is it going to be only on the project, or is it going to be dismissive in the instance?
Yeah, that is a really good question. My first reaction is to say we should do it per project because that's safer. We're reminding them more often. And then if we get data that this is really annoying to those users who regularly do permanent feature flags, then we can address it. That would be my first reaction to that kind of situation.
Okay.
Remind them regularly. If we find out that we're annoying, we can always change it. What do you think? Yeah, that's a very good question.
It makes sense to me.
Okay, then I'll add that checkbox to be able to say don't remind me of this again. And then just as this is tangential to that aspect, on the list view, does it make sense how I broke up the tabs where there's active and inactive, and then closed is this universal, whether it has active strategies or not, the issue is closed, and that's what this list is.
Yeah, it makes total sense to me.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
There is one weird thing that I want to call out, and that is if an issue, if this feature flag, if I were to disable all the strategies with this kill switch and I was on the active tab, technically it wouldn't belong anymore. And in theory, it would just disappear. I'm not a fan of that. My proposal is that similar to to-dos, if I hit done, they fade out and I have the option to undo it without refreshing the page. And then when I refresh, it changes. I'd suggest we do something similar where if it turns off, it kind of grays out. I still have as a user have the option to turn it back on, but the next time I load this page, that now inactive feature flag wouldn't show in the active list. Does that also make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Awesome. Yes, I'm really excited because that means I don't have as much to rework as I thought I might. Cool. As we wrap up, any last feelings on the design before we share it out with the team and do that last week of big scale? What does everyone think review?
There's one thing that I'm in a dilemma about, and that's the feature flag ID. It kind of has a really nice location, prime location on the page, and I don't know, if, at least in the list view, maybe we should ignore it and leave it in the details page. That's one dilemma that I have, because you can't really do anything about it, right?
Sure.
I was looking at for example, the environment page or other, let me kind of, if you can bring up on your GitLab instance, the environment page or similar where you have a list view, you'll see the ID is combined with something else because it really doesn't, it's important to have an ID, right? But I don't know how useful it is to present.
That is a really good comment. It's not very useful, and so it doesn't deserve this place, except it looks good there. I'll be 100% frank. It matches the way that merge requests work, where there's some text and then it moves into the pills, just like issues. So it's familiar feeling. And we show the ID now. So if it disappeared, some user somewhere who uses them might be upset. but yeah, the primary reason is it looks better. I'll be real frank. That's why I put it there. It doesn't deserve that place. And if we find a piece of data that is more important, a piece of text data, we can put it there. But I'd suggest we leave it there now to kind of keep that consistency, the balance, etc.
Okay.
Even though it doesn't quite deserve that space.
Another question that I have is, how do I get to the details page from the list view? I used to have, that pencil on the right-hand side. Do I just click on the name and then get into the details page?
Yes. So I would like to confirm, but I think it's the same as MR's, where the title definitely will do it. And I think if I click anywhere in the space that isn't an interaction by itself, I will also, so if I like click in this blank space where my mouse is now, that would also take me. I'm not sure, but I'll confirm.
Okay.
But definitely the name will do it.
Okay, cool. Can you go into the detail page for a minute?
Of course.
So also in something that we discussed about was that we removed the option to delete feature flags that used to be available and put it under like the convention that we have today in the issues. So we put the destructive action that you actually like need to work in order to do that, and it's not like simple clicks.
Yep. So I have oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so I had the delete function underneath this button. I also would like to put deactivate all strategies as an equally destructive item here, but I know that's a conversation because of the big toggle switch medium. If we were following pattern, that's what it would be. It would be one of the destructive actions in this dropdown. I'd like to do some, during the solution validation, test to see if I ask a user to do that and they don't see that, just remove all strategies, if they'll look at this button or if they'll click on strategies and expect it there and how they feel about it. That's one of the things I do want to test.
Okay, so also just walking through this page, even though we did it before, but for the benefit for anyone watching this video, is if I click the edit button, I can, similar to issues, either change the title of the flag or go into the descriptions section where we, of course, also support Markdown. And then underneath it, we'll have the related links and issues, related merge requests. I see that in this specific mockup, you didn't put related feature flag, but that's also something that we discussed, that maybe flags will have some association to other flags.
Yes,
and then
I will say the reason I didn't include it was the relationships between feature flags, I think, deserve some full design attention because of the many ways they can interact with each other to make sure that we're building something really smooth in that section. So that's why I didn't include it, is I'm kind of expecting it as its own separate piece of work.
Okay, but just FYI, this is the flags today already have linked issues. And in the next milestone, or this one, we're adding linked feature flags already to the issues today. So that's like, it's going to be existing very, very soon. And then underneath, we have all the discussion area where we discuss like in any issue, and we kind of log everything that's changed. And if someone changed the description or if someone changed anything, right?
Yep. One thing I do want to call out, that it's just like an issue where almost everything is shown. Unique to feature flag issue types would be the history of the strategies. So as you can see here, Tina updated 3 of the strategies a few minutes ago, and you'll be able to view what strategies changed.
Awesome.
That will be a unique aspect to the feature flag issue type.
Really cool. I would call out, there's also, when you say updated 3 strategies, it could be toggle on or off.
Yes. We can go through the details when we get to that issue specifically, but what I would imagine is we would show whether or not the toggles turned on or off as a unique like history item. And then if a detail like the percentage or who was on the user list or something like that changed, that would be also shown in there, but shown a little differently. So I was trying to capture both of those in this kind of view updates. Same as we have, if you have a bunch of commits, I think, or a bunch of changes happen, they kind of stack that way.
Okay, that makes sense. So I don't know, this looks really, really great. I'm really excited towards the solution validation. I think it's pretty clear, much better than it is today. So really, really awesome.
I'm really excited to hear that. Okay, that's everything I had to cover. So unless you have any last thoughts, I think we're all set here.
Nope, looks good to me.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you.